The suits upstairs thought, like, this is what people want to hear. Is this?
And they were so right.
So I never thought about it like what you just said, but that does sound awesome. I would love it if whenever I walk into a hospital or a car dealership, I know those people have this. There's a bunch of Jesuses in there.
Yeah.
If the church is defined by partnership with God, and the point of the second coming and the point of the first coming of Jesus coming down was to give us this real partnership. If you get it to the point where God is the one running the show in your life, then of course he's going to make you into some kind of agent of maybe God's hands. We are.
You had one Jesus for just 3 years of active ministry, walking around helping a few people in one particular part of the world. What's needed is much vaster than that. That was just sort of a proof of concept. Yeah, and it's not that we would be infinite, but we don't need to be infinite. That's taken care of. But we could tap into that and be able to help people in that way.
Swedenborg, at the end of his book, True Christianity, just gives you some quotes from the Old Testament that he says are about what it's going to be like when the new church comes.
That's right. I love that.
All this goosebump inducing material, like
yes,
the whole earth will be full of the knowledge of Jehovah, and
that's
waters will come. Like, everything is going to be amazing. There's going to be love and truth everywhere all the time.
Yes, nobody will have to teach anybody because they'll all know me. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so I want that. I'm in. You sold me.
Okay.
How do we make it happen? Here's what Swedenborg says. The second coming of Jesus Christ has to happen through the Bible.
Oh, now, I don't know about that.
Just give
That's just odd. Wouldn't the point be to get rid of that old dusty book?
Yes.
I mean,
and we already have had it. It's already been sitting around. That's it. That's
that,
what you.
The new thing is a 4,000-year-old book.
Okay. Here's what he says. This is from True Christianity 776. The second coming of the Lord is not taking place in person, but in the Word.
Oh, now a lot of people are going to be disappointed to hear
that. It is what it is. Since the Word is from Him, and He is the Word. Many passages say that the Lord is coming in the clouds of heaven.
Yes, they do.
See, for example, and he lists places in Matthew and Mark and Luke and Revelation, even in the Old Testament and Daniel. Until now, no one has known, however, what the clouds of heaven mean. People think the Lord is going to appear in person in the actual clouds in the sky.
Yes. Yep.
But that's not the way that the Word talks. That's not what it does. It tells you literal facts.
Right. And you have sort of physics problem, which is that the way a friend of mine put it, you can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber. When Jesus came into the world, he was resurrected, glorified. Boom, every matter, all that was glorified. He's not going to come into the flesh. He's already done. He's done that. That's done. It can't. It's not going to happen twice. So the way that he comes back is through people's understanding of Scripture. So it's a powerful argument. And at first I wasn't sure about it, but when you really look at it, the idea of coming in the clouds of heaven, the clouds being that confusing literal level of Scripture. He's going to come in the clouds with power and great glory. The power and great glory is that inner level of meaning where once you tap into, oh, this is what's going on behind that, that's where we're all, it says, every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. How is that going to happen? You know, if you physically, just to do this again, you don't have clouds all over the whole world at the same time. It's not light all over the whole world at the same time. Everybody can't, and it would be an appearance to what? Just those 8 billion people who happen to exist at that particular moment.
If I'm in line at the store and I'm way in the back, and by the time I'm done,
or you're asleep, or you
Yeah.
didn't get outside, boom, that was it, or something like. No, it doesn't make that actually doesn't make sense. This makes more sense, that it's going to be coming in, as strange as it sounds when you first hear it. You will see him in those pages, in those that murky, like, I don't get it. And then you start to see that quality, the power and the great glory, that quality of love and that quality of truth, the divine mind that's present in that book inwardly.
Yeah.
That's actually key. It's very strange, but that thing is a key. It was a key for Swedenborg. That he was reading all the time, because that's how it enabled him to have a connection that he had.
Okay. There's so many things I want to say to that. Let me read you like 2 more sentences from this quote.
Oh.
So, the clouds of heaven, this is just backing up what you said. The clouds of heaven stand for the word's literal meaning. The glory and power with which the Lord is going to come stand for the word's spiritual meaning. The reason this has escaped everyone's notice until now.
Oh, okay.
Why nobody knows that?
How could that be the case? Because nobody got this.
When you said clouds, you meant the literal meaning, and when you said glory, you meant the spiritual meaning. Why didn't we? The reason this has escaped everyone's notice until now is that no one yet, even in a theoretical flight of fancy, has guessed that there is any spiritual meaning within the word of the type it actually contains.
Yeah, so I can see that's a real leap to think, because if you just think it is, which it is, on the outside, cloudy is a nice way to put it. It's a very strange book with a lot of weird and some infuriating stories in it. So who would think that has the mind of God in there, and that if you could get into it in the right way, you would form this connection that's unbelievable. It's a place that the human race has hardly dipped a toe into yet.
Yeah.
Of what it's like. But Swedenborg's example, I think, like, how did he do what he did? Amazing things. He clairvoyantly saw the fire when it's 300 miles away, and
Wikipedia.
and predicted the date of his own death and all this kind of stuff. But that's because he was reading scripture and he got in touch with this. There was this connection that brought him into the spiritual world that made amazing things possible. And he spent his old age writing furiously and traveling all over Europe and distributing his books. So,
okay, you don't have to sell me on this, because I know that this is true, that the second coming of the Lord happens in the spiritual sense of the word, because it's happened for me. I would say in a teeny tiny version, I'd say like the lowest end that this can happen. But if the basic premise is that the point of creation is heaven, and heaven comes through connection with God, and the reason why the second coming is so important is because it allows you to understand what God is actually like, or who God actually is.
Yeah.
And that's how you start to actually have this partnership with God. According to Swedenborg.
Because you find something actually likable, not a vengeful, petty person or whatever.
You find something that's better.
Or a narcissist, like we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, no offense, Wolf. But you find something that's better than what you've already got. You find something that's better than your regular life and the thoughts you used to think and the beliefs you used to have. So for me, Swedenborg, all the books that he wrote in his spiritual phase, which we have been mining through for thousands of years on this channel, according to him, all of that is drawn out of this spiritual inner meaning of the Bible. That within that text, if you know correspondences, or you can see the way that the soul within the body there, that's the message that's in there. And that message, the inner sense of the Bible, that's right out of God's mouth. Like that gives you an idea of who God is. You start to see the way that he made things. You start to see the way that he runs things. You get a sense of who he is. And from that, you form this connection with him. Well, to me, why am I sitting around these Swedenborg books every day? Like I have a little moth buzzing around these books, because I am absolutely in love with the character of the God that I see emerging from that. When I see the way that internal sense, which is what Swedenborg is exegeting, that's the answer to that question. Oh, that's how God acts here. Oh, this is the point of life. This is the way things are run. To me, I feel like that is awesome. Like, I love that on its own. If nobody told me I had to love it, I would still be in there and still be doing it. So in this small way, I encounter why am I religious? Because I found this picture of God that I absolutely, this is cooler than Radiohead. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever come across, is that picture of God. And I think it's because it is this is my mini exposure to the second coming of Jesus, which is just the true understanding of who God is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I love that. And it fits so well with what Swedenborg did, because he started out with these 8 Latin volumes that turned into 12 or 15 English volumes of Secrets of Heaven, or Arcana Celestia, as it's been titled, which is all biblical exegesis of Genesis and Exodus. But then out of that come these works of all these teachings sort of aggregated out of it, but it all came out of the Bible. And then he dips back in and he gets some more, and then he dips back in and he gets some more. And that's where this understanding came from. He found all these riches right there in the pages of that, what's often viewed as a homely or long expired book. It had all that in there, and the qualities that you're talking about, of being able to see the tremendous wisdom, the amazing compassion. I mean, it's really helped me understand how you could possibly reconcile yourself with the idea of a loving God and there's hell, or there's all this pain in the world and things like that. Yeah. Like, you start to understand, oh, I see the compassion in it. I see the long game that's going on there. And these qualities of love and wisdom and humility, a sense of humor, like a real humanity. There's a beauty in there that you fall in love with.
And it's better. It's better than I had. That I've got my certain little way of thinking about the world and what I think of people and then I'll read something in there about how it really is, and how God thinks, or how angels think, which is just a mini reflection of how God thinks.
That's
and
right.
I think to myself, ooh, I like that better.
Yeah.
That is cooler than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And Swedenborg ruined his chance at fame and fortune. He had, as you said, he was having these spiritual experiences. He seemed to have some kind of psychic type stuff going on. He could have been a guru and he could have had adulation. Instead, he died kind of an outcast. I mean, some people liked him. A lot of people were mocking him. A lot of people just didn't care. Weird. He sat and sent these books to everybody saying, and you know why? It's because he was so obsessive about, look, it's in the Bible. I'm going to unpack the Bible for you. He wrote those Secrets of Heaven books you're talking about. Didn't sell at all. There's a famous letter that he got which said, you sold 4 books in like 2 months.
2 months, right.
After your grand launch. Even when we're on this podcast.
With marketing and everything. They had marketing.
And he was a celebrity at the time. Even on this little teeny podcast, when we're sitting here and trying to explain this idea of that there's a spiritual sense inside the Bible, and in there, this doesn't really mean that. It means that it is not photogenic. It is not a photogenic idea. It is not good for sound bites. But yet, that Swedenborg was so desperate to get people to understand that that's what's going on, because he's saying God's in there, the actual God. Like you can understand, you can connect directly to the mind of God if you can just start speaking this language. It's sitting right there. He, as you mentioned before, in the spiritual world, according to Swedenborg, angels can know you if you say one sentence. They can know who you are.
That's right.
Because Swedenborg even says in detail, if they, by hearing the tone of your voice, they know what you love.
Yep.
And then by hearing the words that you pick out to say, they know how your mind works. Apply that principle in reverse. If you start to come into contact with what's come out of God's mouth, which not saying the external sense of the Bible, the literal sense of the Bible is clearly that. But once you get into once you speak the language, you do that thing Swedenborg was trying to get you to do, look in there, you can know who God actually is from that. That's the way into the second coming. The second coming is just when you know what God is actually like. You know who he actually is, and from that, of your own accord, you say, "I love that. I want to help you God, do whatever you want to do, because not because anyone's forcing me, not because anyone's making me do this, not because of any threat of anything, but because I really believe that is noble, and I want to die on that hill.
Yeah.